Hello and welcome to the Data Privacy Lawyer. Today's review is going to be some AI terms of service. Last year, I was looking predominantly at privacy notices and cookie notices and privacy policies and cookie policies. But this year, I want to take some time and look at the terms of service because outside of the traditional privacy documentation, the terms of service generally will dictate how a service provider is going to essentially provide the service to you. In providing the service to you, they're going to process your personal data. So this is a very crucial document that should be reviewed by your privacy counsel. One, during the due diligence phase. Every company should have a due diligence phase when it comes to personal data. And then secondly, during the contract negotiations. There should be a review from a perspective how risky it would be adhering or abiding by the terms of service with your service providers. Now, in a lot of the privacy policies and notice reviews that I've done, we've seen that the businesses will talk about their privacy practices in general on the privacy policy, but this is really what you're going to get if you agree to their solution or product, and it influences your personal data. Let's have a look at the product. So it looks like they provide an AI agent, there's a voice AI, there's an agent co-pilot. Essentially, they have some type of platform they're providing you that I presume provides a voice service or processes voice data, voice personal data at a minimum. Without having the technical specifications for these platforms, I wouldn't be able to say for a fact what it is that any of these platforms are doing. But at a minimum, if you engage with this service, you're going to be providing some of your personal data to this organization. And that's generally dictated in the terms outside of the privacy notice that helps you understand what their privacy practices are internally. So that was a couple of minutes just talking about how important it is to have a privacy counsel review the terms of service. Now, different organizations will roll this out in a number of different ways. What we're going to do on this channel is look at those that are public facing. Any public facing privacy documentation is what's going to be reviewed because it gives us insight into what these businesses are doing and what their privacy posture may be. Now, without looking at the internal documents, there's two parts to a privacy program. There's the public facing documentation that you see here, like the terms of service. There's also the privacy policy, privacy notice, cookie policy, cookie notice, and then cookie consent flow. That's all public facing. Us as consumers can see that. Then internal to this organization, there are documents that discuss these solutions in depth as they pertain to the personal data they obtain from you as a customer. So essentially, all the documents need to be read in tandem and need to be updated accordingly. Now, what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, one of these products changes, right? If the product changes how it processes personal data, where the data pertaining to this product is stored, any operation or set of operations on personal data as it pertains to any of these platforms is going to influence the service that you as a customer receive. So the internal documentation needs to reflect that. The terms of service presented to the customer needs to contain that. And then the privacy practices need to reflect that because the data privacy laws require you to be transparent. Now, I've spent a couple of minutes talking about that. We really haven't talked much about this organization specifically. Let's look at the service description. AI Chat owns and provides a cloud-based artificial service offering businesses and agents, so we can see that there's businesses involved, and agents for marketing, sales, customer service, and user engagement. So this is what the service is. Now, internally, there is going to be a lot of technical documentation that explains the data flow pertaining to this service. That's not something you as a customer may be privy to unless you request it during the due diligence phase, which I've talked about severally on this channel. Anything the customer, including its user, so we already know there's individuals, right? Anytime there's individuals, those data protection laws will kick in. Anything the customer configures, customizes, uploads, or otherwise utilizes. So we know that use is one of the terms that consists of processing. Like using data requires you to process data. They are terms that are effectively the same under the data protection laws because process covers a multitude of different actions related to personal data like using, extracting, deleting, storing. Through the service considered a customer submission, customer is solely responsible for its submissions. I want to see where it talks about the personal data section. Let's look at confidentiality because generally sometimes the personal data that is uploaded into a service also constitutes confidential data, and that's a consideration that customers should have when they're reviewing these terms. Each party recognizes that the other party may share business, technical, or financial information pertaining to the disclosing party's operations, that due to the nature of the information and the context of disclosure is reasonably considered confidential information. Now, you as a business need to read this very carefully. Is what I am going to be providing to this organization an overlap with personal data? Is my business, technical, or financial information, does it contain any personal data? That's a consideration for you. For AI chat, confidential information includes non-public details about features, functionality, and performance of the service. The receiving party must protect the disclosing party's confidential information with at least the same degree of care it uses for its own similar information, but no less than a reasonable level of care. Restrict access to confidential information to personnel. So at a minimum, there's going to be information that is processed by the personnel of this organization. That is a processing activity that should be taken into consideration by any organization. Okay, let's take a quick look at data. This is really the bread and butter for privacy counsels such as myself. Customers and their users must provide information. So we've already seen some of the personal data that is going to be processed by this service provider. Customers authorize AI chat and its subcontractors. One of the things you should always take a look at, and I've talked about this on this channel because we've looked at different provisions related to third parties in the privacy practices. So if the privacy notice on a website lists the subcontractors, you as a business during your due diligence phase should be looking at whether the subcontractors that are processing data align with the solution or product that you are signing up for. So we've already seen what the service is. The responsibility on this organization is to always update their subcontractors that are used to store, process, and retrieve user information. That's their responsibility. The customer's responsibility is to make sure that they have a full list of all of the subcontractors that this entity is going to use, because essentially you as the business owner or customer are still ultimately responsible for any information that you upload into their service. This is your responsibility. The names, email addresses, username, and IP addresses belong to you as the customer. But you have a responsibility to know which types of third parties are going to help process your information and in which geographies. Some geographies are more problematic from a data protection standpoint than others. It's your responsibility as the customer to know that. This is why I said this document works hand in hand with all the internal and external documentation that you as a customer have. So I really hope you enjoyed this review. If you like this type of content, subscribe and I'll see you in another review.